In the June quarter, we expect to see the unemployment rate rise to around 10%. Unemployment rose to higher levels in the Great Depression, but it did that over the course of a couple of years. These movements are happening in just a couple of months. We have never seen an economic shock of this speed, magnitude and shape, reflecting that this is both a significant supply and demand shock.
This sombre assessment of the outlook for unemployment and the economy, delivered by Treasury Secretary Stephen Kennedy this week, was a reminder that the coronavirus pandemic is going to change the economic lives of a generation.
So it announced the job seeker package in that second package.
That has got people thinking about those well-worn words, economic reform. A large part of the problem with economic reform is that it has been talked up so often, only to end up crashing on the rocks of intransigence or ideology. Too often the problem is a culture that reduces the discussion to just one or two key proposals, say a cut in the company tax rate, and a demand that they be ruled in or ruled out, rather than become one moving piece in a more complex trade-off.
Don't pass on $50 billion in corporate tax.
Work choices is dead, buried, cremated. Give me a bit of paper, I'll sign it.
Why is it so hard to rule out a capital gains tax on the family home?
I described them yesterday as fiction.
No, there's no way that GST will ever be part of our policy.
When you float the dollar, you float the bloody dollar.
Don Russell was at the very centre of both the political and economic sides of the reform process in the Hawke-Keating years as Paul Keating's Chief of Staff.
Dr Don Russell, at present, heads Paul Keating's office.
But he is also vitally engaged now in the investment decisions that will have to be made after this crisis as chair of Australia's largest super fund, Australian Super. He says the crucial issue is not the answers, but framing the question.
If you just go to the filing cabinet and pull out earlier proposals, earlier reports, earlier recommendations, if you try and do that in the abstract, you're going to get the same response that those proposals got when they first came out of the filing cabinet 5-10 years ago. You have to do it the reverse. You've got to have the problem, and then you find the solutions.
When Prime Minister Scott Morrison started a new conversation about economic reforms to help the economy back on its feet, the usual suspects were mentioned: industrial relations reform, tax and red tape.
What I'm honestly saying to Australians is we're looking at all options with fresh eyes.
Right away, ministers were being asked to rule in or rule out particular policies.
Are you ruling it out?
We've got no plans to do it because it's not on my desk.
But a more nuanced discussion is occurring about what needs to happen to the economy next. There seems to be a willingness to cooperate between big business and the trade union movement, which have been at loggerheads for so long now.
I think we should start somewhere else this time. It'd be great if we could get on the same page before we go into this set of reform about what kind of society do we want to be.
There are common issues here. There's common concerns around wanting to have a better bargaining system, common concerns about wanting to address the level of wage theft. Hopefully there's a shared view that we shouldn't have so many insecure jobs.
But what is really exercising the minds of business, unions, government and investors are the sorts of changes that flow out of this particular time.
We're looking at probably a shrinking of the university sector. The tourism industry will have to refocus on the domestic sector. And probably the most interesting thing is that we're looking at a period ahead of us. There's going to be actually a stimulus to the manufacturing sector that then very quickly moves into a discussion about skills, training, research.
If you're going to have a local manufacturing industry, there's ways that governments can support that. They can support that through skills. They can support that as well by using their own procurement power.
That high-end, premium price, specialised manufacturing, data centres and very high-end agribusiness. And that's going to require us to think about our skills.
Tax reform isn't going away, but the contentious issue of the company tax rate is not the beginning and end of the conversation.
What we want is a competitive tax system, not the lowest tax rates for businesses, but something that is competitive. Now, that might be company tax, but it might be an investment allowance.
To achieve any of these changes, governments need authority, which they gain when they are seen to handle a crisis well. Someone who has lived through such momentous times says governments at all levels need to understand the source of their new authority and not make the error of believing it clears the way for a new political crusade, the sort of mistake John Howard made with work choices in 2004.
All governments need to be careful that they don't misinterpret what has just happened. They are now held in high regard, but they need to think about why they've been able to bring expertise to bear on a problem, and they've been able to find solutions. And it would be, I think, unwise for governments to think that what they have now done is built up a stock of political capital, which can now be spent achieving difficult things. It just doesn't work that way.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.